Hey yo. So we need to talk about something that is really problematic. And I'm just thinking about it. Father guy keeps saying money talks. And a lot of y'all, I think we are not really thinking about how money talks. So I'm just gonna show you something and let's see if you understand what I'm trying to say.
For the videos I've been getting. If I say Israel, you got to pay me a certain price. If I say Zionist, you pay me a certain price. If I say Zionist, Israel, and Jewish, that's the big three, I get paid for that. Right. Same as always. Yeah, just keep paying me the same thing. Zionist, Israel, Jewish, you pay me. No problem. If I do a what if I do a watermelon emoji and if I say something about fuck Palestine? If I say fuck Palestine on camera, okay, you're gonna give me more. Okay, cool. Fucking film me.
It has just dawned upon me that people who are against global land back movements and dismiss any type of indigenous sovereignty are the same people who support the apartheid state of Israel. One of the biggest misconceptions is that land back means giving the land back to the indigenous people and then evicting and displacing any non-indigenous people. That is false, and it is misinformation that is often spread to try and dismiss the land back movement and deter people from learning about what it is. Land back at its core is about returning power and sovereignty back to indigenous peoples. It is about land and eco-restoration, it's about language and cultural revitalization, and it's about dismantling colonial infrastructures, systems, and ideologies that have absolutely destroyed our planet and all life on it. In no genuine land back movement do we preach mass evictions and displacement because we know this leads to ethnic cleansing and genocide. So going back to my original point, it is crazy to me that people who are misinformed about land back movement and believe that it's about mass displacement would turn around and support the apartheid state of Israel, because that is what Israel has been doing for the past 75 years, displacing Palestinian people and building illegal settlements on that land. And the way they justify it is by saying that Jewish people are the original people of that land. They're indigenous to that land. They are the chosen people of that land. And therefore what they are doing can be justified. In no other scenario would that logic hold up. If I said to you, Māori are the original people of New Zealand, and therefore we have a right to displace anyone who is non-Māori from our lands, and if you resist us, if you do not leave, we have a right to unalive you and your entire family. No one is supporting that because that is insanity. But somehow when Israel does it, it's justified. What's even more insane to me is that our governments support Israel knowing if that logic applied to their country, they would no longer exist. New Zealand, Australia, Canada, USA, if we applied Zionist logic to your countries, none of you would exist. That is how you know that Zionism and the apartheid state of Israel is not about indigenous sovereignty. It's not about a land back movement. It's about colonialism. It's about Western imperialism, and it's about controlling the resources in that region.
So billions of dollars in revenue from the sale of Congo's cobalt to companies like Tesla are being used to build illegal settlements in the West Bank. Israeli billionaire Dan Gutler, who obtained Congolese cobalt mines through illegal and corrupt means, then sold those cobalt mines to an Anglo-Swiss mining giant known as Glencore. Glencore, in turn, has a deal with Tesla to provide Tesla the cobalt that it needs to produce its electric vehicles. And so you see, Tesla is paying Dan Gutler directly because Dan Gutler receives $250,000 in royalties per day from the sale of this cobalt to companies like Tesla. And this is in a country where more than 60% of the population lives in abject poverty. Dan Gutler invests that money, those royalties, in two Canadian registered construction companies that are involved in building illegal settlements in the West Bank. Dan Gutler is currently under US sanctions, but the Biden administration wants to lift these sanctions because of its irrational push towards the green energy transition, spearheaded by companies like Tesla. And so you see, these billionaire CEOs, these corporations are the policymakers. These corporations hold enormous power and influence in our governments. And that is something we have to realize before we start saying that boycotts don't work. Free Congo.
So there's this thing saying that not all money, dirty money, is good money, right? So basically, what I'm trying to say is that, and I've been thinking about this a lot, and I'm just like, most of us who are in the pro-Palestine and in diaspora and doing this type of work, and it's like we don't get paid for this. We actually lose a lot. Okay, and I'm not saying this to like complain or anything like that. Like, I am honored to do this because, but I know a lot of people that have lost job, have lost residency in the hospital, or their studies. There's kids who their moms have advocated and they have lost the high school, their education, and there's a lot of things that you lose by this. But I feel like a lot of us need to be reminded of this, is that these people are getting paid by very evil, sinister, and vile people to lie. We, on the other hand, our payments, our rewards, it's not something that is tangible in the physical. Yes, we lose a lot in the physical, we lose a lot, but at the end of the day, we get our humanity. We have our integrity and our humanity. We have our heart. And that's what should matter the most for all of y'all. Okay? So, and another thing that I keep feeling this way is that so far, yes, I'm losing a lot of in the physical, but we are all gaining a lot of spiritual knowledge, a lot of lessons that is going to last a lifetime. So for us, we need to look at this as a long-term investment. Okay, just like a lot of you look at long-term investment when you buy a house, when you get stuff like that, like I don't know, a car or something like that. Look at it as a long-term investment. Our investment right now, our energy and resources, and what we're doing right now for the right side of history and God. Because what I'm saying is that whatever you lose, God will give it to you 110 times fold. So you guys need to remember this also. The energy of people attacking you, bullying you, any witchcraft, dark magic, or whatever people are doing also in the background, so you stop talking, so you shut the fuck up. I talk about this on this YouTube channel and all the channel messages that we've been getting, okay? Don't look at it that way. Don't think about that, okay? Because a lot of us, we focus so much, and that too is like when you're doing the right thing, when you have the right heart, when you're honest and you have integrity, you don't really have to worry about what other people are doing with your energy, do you? So I need you guys to think about this, okay? Remember that at the end of the day, when you're doing the right thing, it's not much of what other people are doing that you need to focus on, okay? Another thing I'm going to say to other, because I'm getting all these Zionist messages back again and the emails and stuff like that. Listen to me. You do not have to watch. You can continue scrolling. You can continue. There's other YouTube people. There's other TikTok people. There's other Instagram people that you can talk to, that you can express yourself, okay? I'm used to all your energy. You're not going to come here to dehumanize me, demonize me, or whatever it is that I'm doing. And like I said before, I am actually, now I'm looking these people, because the fact is that the content that I'm revealing here is about people blowing up babies and killing people, innocent people, and genocide and stuff like that, right? We're talking about this seriously here, right? And then when I have people like, oh, you should... you're a Hamas or a terrorist or something like that, you're just revealing me who you are, that you're okay with genocide, that you are a psychopath, okay? And get the hell out of my energy. I warned you guys already before. I've been doing this already. Do not mess with my energy or anybody who is connected to me. I am telling you right now, it's not a good look for you, and it's not going to go good. Stop messing with spiritual people who are in their North Node, who are connected to God, and who have multiple ancestors. You do not know who you're messing with. I am telling you, especially old souls who have been here longer than you. I'm talking on a soul level, not the physical. Okay? And if you don't understand that, maybe you should go and educate yourself. Okay? Now, what I'm trying to say here is that, yes, money talks, but so is the heart. The heart is, the love is, it's much bigger than the physical. Your love that you have for others, the empathy and compassion, that kindness for others, what you do for others. Those who I would suggest to check out Operation Olive Branch. I will be in the description below. All the description below is going for you guys to support other Palestinians in Gaza right now. You need to also use the right words. We talk about that as well, okay? But there's multiple videos here that is going to be shown here for the same reason. Again, it's just we need to talk about this more often, especially because we know their plan, we know what they're trying to do, we know that there's evil what they're trying to do, and we cannot let this go. We need to put ourselves, use our platform, use our voices, okay, to speak for those who are being oppressed. Okay, it's our duty, it's our God's calling. It's not just a little purpose that we have, or little goals and little things and little reading energy and stuff like that. Like, this is why I feel very I feel like I'm alone with the spiritual community, to be honest. There's not a lot of people talking about this. It's really sad, and they consider themselves spiritual or like, but there's no humanitarian work that they have done. There's nothing. There's just, they only care about themselves and their own material gain. And that reveals itself. Money talks for them too, right? The fact that they have a huge platform, they have viewers, they have all the means and necessary, and them talking about Palestine is not going to affect them as much, and they still don't do it. The same thing with influencers and celebrities. Money talks, and that's how you know where their integrity and their heart is, where it lies, right? Now, you're seeing that their campaign right now is to seek influence. A lot of us who started in October 7, you were called too, right? You will send an email and stuff like that, and you said, fuck that, no. Good for you. That's what you're supposed to do. Now, encourage others that are not that bright here, and they haven't educated themselves, because you probably, absolutely you have, because all of us who educate ourselves about this, we will not be supporting Israel, okay? And also, I'm really glad that Canada put that ban of not sending more money to Israel for them to, selling them more weapons and stuff like that. But again, don't hold that to a cult. Is because they're scared that people are not doing their taxes right now. They're scared. They want people to do their taxes. So be careful with that. Also, there's elections or something like that in Canada, so look out for that, okay? Don't leave it all up to that we still have to continue going. Even though this is great, they're one of the first country. Congratulations, Canada. Congratulations, Trudeau. You did the right thing once in the past 6 months. But don't think that we're just going to forget what you've done, okay? There's reparations. There's accountability that needs to be happening, okay? But at least one of y'all, of the major countries that have contributed to this genocide, they have decided to finally make a stop. I hope that energy stays for long, and I hope that, but a lot of you, some people now need to take an example for Canada now. And I'm glad that they're outside of like, okay, we're not following the USA. Good for you. You shouldn't. You should be unique. You should do your own thing. So now Canada and South Africa are in the game, right? I think USA should be in this. UK, okay? Germany, shame on you, motherfucker. Shame on you, motherfucker. I'm serious. Others of you, I don't know what's going on with you. I feel like a lot of you, there's something has to be wrong with you, that you have accepted this and you're bypassing, and then you're not talking about this, taking that energy or strength and courage that comes from the divine, that comes from God, because you are part of that energy, and you have decided to discard it, and I welcome Satan. It's so sad. Continue talking about Palestine, okay? Don't leave this like that, all right? I love you guys. Enjoy all the videos. Make sure you share and comment and amplify it. Follow the intuition. If Father God tells you to share those in your accounts, and just please do it. Continue doing it, okay? At the end of the day, we don't work for men. We work for God. Do you understand? Don't forget that. I love you. Free Palestine.
So here's a piece of information that everyone needs to start sharing and talk about, which is that by default under Chinese export law, ByteDance cannot actually sell. China, just like the US and many other countries, have certain trade restrictions, export and import. And one of those restrictions is that they can't simply export their technology. Now, our lawmakers who came up with this divest or get banned bill already understood that ByteDance cannot sell under Chinese export law. That's why they came up with this bill. They want to basically ban TikTok and blame the Chinese government. This bill was never about divest or get banned. It was literally about, hey, we're going to ban you. And you know what? We're going to ban you because we know you can't sell. Anyone in the media, I'm talking about lawmakers or journalists talking about the sale of TikTok without mentioning this critical factor that they can't actually sell under Chinese export law, is essentially a propaganda.
And that shift essentially is a shift from a centralized world where information comes from up top to a decentralized world where information comes from each other. And that is a terrifying change for the US empire. I mean, just listen to this clip from Representative Gallagher, who's a sponsor from this bill, where he gives a reason for why TikTok needs to be banned.
Foreign adversary control of what is becoming the dominant news platform for Americans under 30.
See, that's a really interesting quote, the main news source of those of us under 30. But why would that matter so much to Representative Gallagher? Oh yeah, it's because he's taken thousands from AIPAC and he's complicit in a genocide being live streamed on this app. Like for decades, I could count on 2 hands the number of white men that controlled the information landscape in the US. But TikTok has become the exception to that, and that lack of control is terrifying. In order for propaganda to be truly effective, it needs to be generational. And what that means is you spread propaganda to the current generation, those ideas get imbued into their head and then passed down to their kids in the next generation, and then those ideas are further reinforced by the media that the next generation consumes. So through this process, you can generationally propagandize an entire population until the views and the positions of the government become the default truth. But now we're entering a world where the information doesn't come from up top. It doesn't come from institutions like the government or the newspapers. It comes from each other. It comes from our phones just literally recording what's happening on the ground and showing each other. And that breaks the generational propaganda chain. And that is a huge amount of power for the US empire to lose, and they will do everything they can to maintain control. So this is just the first step. This is just the first attempt at maintaining control of their information landscape.
So the government claims that they're trying to ban TikTok because China has control over what we do and don't see on the app. And I figured we can just test that. I mean, I have a huge following. I can just make a video that tests exactly what they're trying to say we can't see. And we can all just boost this video and see if it gets censored. So we're about to speed run everything bad about China that China doesn't want anyone to know. And we'll see if TikTok takes it down. Because the other day I was in a Twitter space with the FCC commissioner and a number of other government officials and people that are working on this China legislation. And they seem to very genuinely, as like honest people, be concerned about the China issue. Like, it made it clear to me that the ongoing discussion on Capitol Hill and amongst the regulators and people involved in the bill is at least that they see it as a genuine concern that China can control what hashtags trend and what topics get seen and what topics get suppressed. And I realized that I've never made any China content. I've never made anything critical of China, and I don't really see that much stuff that's critical of China on TikTok. Maybe because we just never think about it and talk about it, but let's see. So here's a greatest hits of all of the worst things about China that are real things that they don't want you to know about, and now you're about to know about them, and we'll see if they take it down. Let's start with the Uyghurs, the Muslims that live in the northwestern side of China. China's been essentially doing a G-word to this Uyghur Muslim population for like 10 years or more now. They've created hundreds of re-education camps where they've detained more than 1 million Muslims since 2017. Even outside of the camps, Uyghurs are subjected to intense surveillance, forced labor, and involuntary sterilization, among other rights abuses. Ex-detainees said that they were tortured, subjected to sleep deprivation, and women have shared stories of that and that. And they're not just worried about the Uyghurs because they're different than the Han Chinese people, but also because this region is extremely energy rich, and it's critical to their $1 trillion Belt and Road Initiative, which is China trying to remake the Silk Road with modern technology.
The country launched the Belt and Road Initiative, a $1 trillion investment in things like fiber optic cables, train lines, and gas pipelines, meant to boost the country's economic and political influence around the world by making it easier to trade with China. If you plot these projects on a map, you'll see a lot of them pass through Xinjiang.
We had to sing songs hailing the Communist Party. We had to repeat in Chinese, "Long live Xi Jinping."
There have been reports of death, of torture.
3 guards surrounded me and abused me.
Each time I was electrocuted, my whole body would shake.
So yeah, that's number one. Number two is anyone in China that speaks out just mysteriously disappears. There's the famous case of the Wimbledon tennis player. I think her name is pronounced Peng Shuai. She accused one of China's top Communist Party officials of sexual assault, and then all of her posts on the internet were deleted and she just disappeared for a while. There's the famous case of China's most successful entrepreneur who criticized something about their policies and just disappeared. And then perhaps the most famous political appearance of Premier Zhao Jiang, which happened right as the Tiananmen Square situation kicked off. This is the thing they like to talk about the least, so obviously we're going to talk about it. If you don't know, in 1989, there was a whole bunch of protests and unrest growing of people criticizing the, shall we say, authoritarian nature of the government, calling for more democratic reforms, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people gathered in Beijing to protest. This is where you get the famous Tank Man photo. And then China deployed the military and started firing on the civilian protesters, killing hundreds, if not thousands, of unarmed, peaceful pro-democracy protesters. And they imposed martial law, cracking down on dissent all over the country. Here's footage.
Noise of gunfire rose from all over the center of Peking. And then, as troop lorries were seen moving down the road, there was gunfire from those lorries. The troops have been firing indiscriminately, but still, there are thousands of people on the streets who will not move back. The bicycle rickshaws scooped up the injured. Others were shunted onto bikes and pedaled to hospital.
And all that is not to mention what China's been doing to Tibet for decades now. So there's the spark notes on a lot of the worst things about China that China does not want you to know about or to talk about. And I say that y'all help me boost this video, get it up there in views, and see if it gets censored. Because I think we can all agree that I did a pretty good job of not saying any keywords that would get a video banned normally, of not showing anything terribly violent or graphic. There's nothing in this video that should get it taken down, right? I mean, my anti-American government videos get taken down for Lord knows what, for everything. I even had a 9/11 memorial video that wasn't about conspiracy theories. It's just about how beautiful life is and how you should enjoy every moment of it. I had that taken down by TikTok. So if this video stays up and gets a lot of views, that pretty thoroughly undermines this narrative of China controls TikTok's algorithms and China censors what you and I can see. Because there's two arguments that the US government's making. One is that China can control what we do and don't see about China, and so US citizens aren't learning about how bad China is, which is a big problem. And the other criticism is that China is mining all the data from TikTok and getting valuable data resources on American citizens. And we all know that all of the tech apps have data sharing policies, and that any app that has business in China has data sharing policies, and they have hacks into all the apps and into our power grid and everything else. So we know that they can get our data whether they divest from TikTok or not. And I'm going to be on another space later today talking about this China ban with various officials on Twitter. We'll see what comes of that. We'll see what comes of this video. Help me get it out to the world. Help me see if we can debunk this theory. Or hell, maybe they censor this video and then we do a little more investigating and see if there's legs on this thing. I think one of the most important things in independent journalism, in journalism in general, is not to presuppose that you already know the truth. Even if it seems unlikely, or even if it seems like there's ulterior motives, test your theories, do some research, be okay with being wrong. We'll see what happens. I mean, I feel confident that the US government has ulterior motives in this whole situation. They don't all agree on anything ever. But even so, let's see if there's anything to these allegations that they're making about China controlling TikTok. Despite TikTok already moving all of its data and servers to Oracle, a CIA company based in Texas. Nothing about that is fishy. Because let's just close by reminding ourselves that every government in this modern world is corrupt, and they're all screwing everyone over. And China, America, Russia, every other government in between, they're all trying to, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. They're not good.
We should create a humanitarian problem that will force Egypt and Turkey and Europe to absorb the Arabs as refugees. There will be no Arabs in the Gaza Strip. I want them out of Gaza, and we'll use different methods so the countries of the world will have pity on them and take them.
Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. دمار كامل.
هذه هجرة، هذه هجرة. وين بدهم يودونا؟ على السينا؟ على وين بدهم يودونا؟
Israel's real aim is clear, is to empty the land of Palestinians. Israel is obliterating all forms of life in Gaza in a clear attempt to make Gaza uninhabitable so that Palestinians are forced to leave. A lot of people in the West look at this and say, how can people not allow Palestinians to get in? But in fact, this is a position coordinated with the Palestinians themselves, who have learned the lesson from 1948, who do not wish to leave.
First of all, there was ethnic cleansing of about 300,000 Palestinians in the immediate aftermath of the June 67 war. Since 67 until today, Israel used an incremental policy of ethnic cleansing. Around 500,000 Palestinians were expelled in one way or another, or banned from returning, which is the same.
كل هذا وصابرين وبنقول يا رب نروح بس. يا رب نروح نرجع على دورنا.
والله انما احنا مهاجرين، يا اما يذبحونا فيها يا اما نعيش فيها، واحدة من هالثنتين.
Know that it's not cool to support Israel.
Yeah, it's not cool to support Israel the same way it's not cool to support oppression, subjugation, wrongful criminalization, dehumanization, forced starvation, intentional dehydration, long-term displacement, the whole of Earth's complacement, the continuous bombardment, the mass unalivement of every man, woman, and child, the destruction of their churches, the decades-long insidious erasure of their history and culture. It will never be cool to support vultures. A violent occupation preceded by colonization, public humiliation. We have genocide, apartheid, the most atrocious war crimes. Kids can't be kids because they've been dehumanized. A whole group in its entirety completely traumatized. I will always support the colonized and the people who have had their religion weaponized in the attempt to have their genocide justified. So yes, it is not cool to support any of those things, but all of those things are wrapped into the Palestinian struggle, their culture, and their history. So it was uncool to support Israel. I agree.
Once Gazans leave Gaza, Netanyahu's never going to let them back in.
Maybe, but I'm not sure there's much left of Gaza at this point. And Gaza's waterfront property, it could be very valuable. It's a little bit of an unfortunate situation there, but I think from Israel's perspective, I would do my best to move the people out and then clean it up.
This is the quiet part out loud. That this is what is widely understood, but not supposed to be said out loud, Jared. Like the flesh of the children that he wants to build his luxury developments on hasn't even fully decomposed off of the bones. I just wanted to really quickly read this paragraph that I saw the other day, just to give people a sense of what the construction of these kinds of cities and the development on Palestinian land really looks like. Tel Aviv serves as a coordinating point in a globally integrated imperial project. The money generated from the purchase of settlement feta cheese in Marina del Rey Costco helps to finance the dispossession machines of the Jordan Valley, where the Israeli dairy conglomerate Tenuva operates a food processing plant. Former Israeli soldiers recruited into New York private equity firms make tax-deductible contributions to the 501c3 designated charitable nonprofit Friends of the Israeli Defense Forces to support the army that protects their second homes. Laundered billions stream in from Zionist mining extraction in Guinea and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where the mineral magnates flee to Israel to avoid international sanctions. This is the story of all colonialisms. Settlers build their tall, shiny things on the embers of the societies they torch, enlist the dispossessed into the production and maintenance, export the spoils, and bury their guilt in their families, splaying out on terraces, declaring themselves home at last. Just to give credit really quickly, the piece is called Hating It Lush on Tel Aviv by Kaleem Hawa.
So the striking thing about this video, as someone who was in the tactical operations centers in Afghanistan while Obama was just drone striking everything, it's just one of the clearest, most irrefutable demonstrations that they are smoking civilians, and whatever drone operator did this was just doing it for sport. They had no weapons, and they're not getting any signal intelligence off these guys because handset signal is spotty and most batteries don't really work anymore. And also, age group doesn't really use cell phones like that. They record all their strikes of Merkava tanks and all their combat footage with DSLR cameras. And this guy up here, he knows a strike just happened like 50 meters that way. He's just too freaking exhausted and is like, fuck it. And it irrefutably proves that they have the capability to perform precision strikes, so they don't really need to be dropping 2,000-pound bombs on refugee camps. No guns, no reason to believe there was signal intel, so this was done for sport.
So I have very little sympathy for what has become of that state. It's a satanic state. You know, you look at the polls, 60% of Israelis, 60% say Israel's not using enough force in Gaza. It's not using enough force in Gaza. If you look at every metric out there, every metric, intensity of bombing, payload of bombs, imprecision of bombs, destruction of civilian infrastructure, ratio of civilians to combatants killed, ratio of children to total numbers killed, ratio of women and children to total numbers killed. If you look at every metric, there have been so many studies now done. What Israel is doing in Gaza is in a class completely its own. You know, it doesn't even compare. It doesn't even compare remotely to the carpet bombing of German cities during World War II. The Allied carpet bombing of German cities. The Allied bombing of Dresden. Doesn't compare.
It's fine when American tech billionaires influence our politics. We have no problem with that. Congress will never ban it. That's why back in February, when Instagram, Meta, Threads, all of them announced that they were limiting political content in a future update, there really wasn't that big of a deal from Washington because who cares? It's an American company. Political content is now limited officially. It defaulted everyone into limiting political content. Now, what is that? What do we define that as? It's very vague, and here it is at the top of the page. Political content is likely to mention governments, elections, or social topics that affect a group of people and or society at large. That sounds like literally everything to me. So I'm going to show you how to get to this on Instagram so you can turn this feature the fuck off. So first, then go to your profile page. If you find my page, you can give me a follow. You're going to click that, what Instagram calls the hamburger button in the corner. The hamburger button will open up your general menu here. Click Settings and Privacy at the top. Then you're going to scroll down about half a page, and you're going to click for Content Preferences. Once you're under Content Preferences, go look for Political Content. Also, check out Sensitive Content. You want to see if that one's been turned off. You don't want that one turned off either. Anyway, go check Political Content. And once you click Political Content, you will then see that you are automatically been limited. Again, they don't define what political content is. People don't know what a political account is. But yeah, make sure if you're using it that you have the...
So Israel has officially ranked in the top 5 happiest places to live in the entire world. But wait a minute, I thought they were living in constant terror and fear. It takes a certain level of sadism to ethnically cleanse an entire population, usurp their homes and lands, and still be recognized as one of the top 5 happiest countries to live in the world. Who knew you could be this happy committing a genocide? Vile. Free Palestine.
there is no attribution or demands to the Israeli authorities for what is taking place in Gaza. For example, who is responsible for 1.5 Palestinians taking refuge in Rafah? And who has announced a planned military ground offensive there? To whom is the demand for compliance with obligations under international law regarding the protection of civilians and civilian objects, humanitarian access, and the protection of humanitarian relief and medical personnel, their assets and infrastructure applicable? Who has erected and maintained the existing barriers to the provision of humanitarian assistance at scale? Who is responsible for the forcible displacement of the civilian population in Gaza? Who is preventing the use of all available routes to and throughout the entire Gaza Strip? Who does not respect the confliction and notification mechanisms? We know the answers to these questions. We have heard briefer after briefer, both from the UN system and civil society, describe the situation on the ground, explaining where the problems are and who is responsible for creating these problems. Why then were the relevant demands in the resolution not clearly addressed to the occupying power? Not even once was this done. Indeed, if one were to read this resolution without background knowledge, it would be difficult to ascertain which party in this conflict is committing the atrocities in Gaza, atrocities which necessitated this draft resolution being put forward.
Can you give us an idea of what you discovered happened on that day? And was mass sexual violence used by Hamas as a weapon? This is certainly very much the narrative that came out in much of the media at the time.
The basic answer is no. There simply is not the evidence or anything approaching sufficient evidence to that sexual violence was systematic and widespread and deliberate and instrumentalized and weaponized. You would expect far more evidence than that. Now, whether isolated incidents of rape occurred, we just don't know. And it's possible, you know, rape very commonly does occur in situations of war, and you certainly can't rule that out.
Yes, I mean, we have seen video, I think, of, I mean, I've certainly seen video of young women being dragged and treated appallingly and thrown into the back of trucks and things like that. But of course, beyond that, we have to hear the reports of others. But essentially, what you're saying is that there is actually no established evidence that the Israelis have acted. Have the Israelis provided any evidence?
None at all. Well, essentially, if you actually look at the reporting in things like the BBC, the Guardian, and the New York Times, it's quite clear they're getting all their reporting from Israeli officials, IDF officials, and first responders. You know, the big significance of the baby story is that we know all those stories are untrue, and they were all coming from Israeli officials, the IDF, and first responders. And if those sources have proved extremely unreliable in that story, then common sense is they're going to be unreliable in other stories. So you look for other evidence, and the visual evidence just isn't there. You know, yes, there is footage of young Israeli women being taken hostage. Yes, but that's not evidence of rape. You know, I think people can rather fill in they rather fill in the gaps in their imagination, but that's nothing like, that doesn't even approach evidence. The 7 hours of footage I watched from the day, there's no sexual violence occurs. There's dreadful things happen in it, but there isn't any sexual violence in that footage. Post-mortem, the films and the photographs taken after the event, no, again, I mean, yes, you see dead people with lots of blood on them, but you know, that's not evidence of rape. I mean, if we take one case study, one image that I took very, very seriously, there was a young woman, she was killed, shot 9 miles north of the music festival site as she was escaping very early in the morning, you know, about 7 in the morning. And this was the centerpiece of the New York Times story, their big screams without words story. And about a third of the article consisted of this. And almost immediately it had come out, the woman's family or her sister spoke out, said, hang on, this isn't true. And when when we spoke to the New York Times about this, they didn't tell us this was a story about sexual violence. We know she wasn't raped because she was texting us almost up to the moment of her death. Her husband, who was with her, spoke to his brother for 44 minutes immediately afterwards, and didn't mention a rape. We know she wasn't raped. So that, in a way, was the most powerful image, that was the centerpiece of one of the biggest investigations the New York Times into this, and it collapsed almost immediately. So there just isn't. For example, the Israelis will talk a lot about how you have bodies of young women tied to posts, tied to trees, with the lower part of their clothing removed. But again, not a single image to support this. Now, Zaka, who were responsible for collecting bodies, will say, well, we weren't told to take photos. It's not what we're trained in, and so on, which might be true. But there's not a single image to support this. And there are thousands of images of the immediate aftermath. And another example, you will see first responders, people who worked in the morgues, who will talk again and again about the sexual mutilation of corpses. Now, the somewhat dubious UN report, which came out about 3 weeks ago, garnered the headlines that I think the Israelis wanted. If you actually read it, there's some serious professional work that has gone on there. And one of the things they say is we could see no evidence for a pattern of sexual mutilation of corpses at all. So basically, we can go on to the issue of witnesses as well, of whom there are remarkably few, and there's certainly no victims, possibly because they're dead. I mean, of course. And this is the point we make in the film. Yes, perhaps there were isolated instances of rape, but if it was systematic and widespread, you would have some evidence. You'd have some evidence.
Give us an idea.
So as some of you guys may have seen, the United States is planning to build a seaport off the coast of the Gaza Strip. And in order to begin the construction of the seaport, they have brought in hundreds of trucks and construction supplies and different materials needed in order to start the actual process of building it. But this raises a very important question. If you guys were able to bring in trucks and construction supplies and materials into Gaza to build a seaport, why can't you bring in food? And remember, the reason America wants to build this seaport is to make sure that they can bring in aid to Gaza. But why can't they bring in aid already if they're bringing in trucks and construction supplies and different materials? This is clearly not about bringing aid into Gaza. This is clearly about America expanding its imperialist interests in the Middle East. It's America literally building a base for itself in the Gaza Strip. And we already know that the Zionist occupation has been supporting America's idea to build a seaport, helping them construct it, and have been planning this idea with them since the beginning. If you wanted Gaza to have a seaport, then let Gazans build their own seaport. Stop bombing them and besieging them in a literal concentration camp. Stop trapping 2.3 million Palestinians in a city the size of Detroit. Stop starving them and preventing aid from coming in when very clearly you are very capable of bringing in materials and supplies into Gaza. Western hypocrisy has been completely exposed. Their masks have fallen off and we are seeing the scary faces behind them. Please make dua for the people of Palestine. May Allah protect them and strengthen them, increase them in sabr, and accept their martyrdom.
Instagram decided to remind us just how much they suck with their latest update, a new content filter called political content. The default setting for everyone is limit the amount of political content that shows up on your recommendations. This is content that mentions governments, social topics, elections, and unless you go into your settings and change it to don't limit, moving forward, you're automatically going to be shown a lot less content about this stuff. They posted about this on their blog a month ago in February. Just like snuck it in, and now everyone's stuck on default limit political content. Now, there are probably a lot of reasons why they implemented this change, but just observing Meta's history with the Palestinian cause and Zionists pushing them to limit pro-Palestinian, anti-Israeli content. But there's just no way that this has nothing to do with Palestine. It just has to play some role in this change. But basically what this means for people who share content about Palestine is that now it's going to be harder for us to reach larger audiences. It's going to be harder to teach more people about the cause. Instagram claims that this isn't going to affect the people that you already follow, the accounts that you already follow, who talk about politics. Their content is still going to show up on your feed, This is specific to your recommendations. Recommendations is how we're able to continue to spread the word. Now, that feature of recommendations is gone for us. What makes it even worse is that they mention in their blog post that for this political content, they're no longer going to use the standard algorithm content ranking approach for content that falls under this political category. So traditionally, content on social media is ranked. As soon as you post a piece of content, they show it to a certain number of people. The higher the engagement is from those first few people that they showed it to, the higher it's going to rank on your social media feed, thus showing it to more people and getting more views. But now they're saying that content that falls under this political category is not going to follow this ranking system. So just adding another layer of difficulty to spread the word about Palestine, Sudan, Congo. So what do we do about this? One, obviously go to your settings, change it to don't limit. Two, make sure you're actually following the people who create content about Palestine. Now you can't just assume their content is going to show up on your feed anymore through recommendations. Then three, and most importantly, when you do see a piece of content discussing Palestine, make sure you share it to your story. That's one of the most effective ways to get more eyes on the content, where now all of your followers are going to see that piece of content. And of course, we leave the rest to Allah, inshallah. Instagram, عليكن كلياتكن.
A builder's rubble to start building this pier. They took it from the remains of the bombed Palestinian homes. So they stole, basically, the stone that these houses were made of. They bombed them, and then they collected up the rubble and started to build a port. There's thousands of people lost, still missing, that are under the rubble. So when you manage to get an excavator, and you take it to these places, and you pick up all of this rubble, and then you cart it all the way down the Seacoast Road to build this pier. In that will be the remains of Palestinians who are still missing. When you walk on this pier, you're going to be walking literally on the remains of Palestinian people. You're going to be walking across a pier, or driving, which is more to the point, over the remains of the dead, who never got a burial, who never got named, and who never got rescued. Children, the skulls of children will be amongst this rubble. A road of the dead. When these homes were bombed, Palestinians only had their hands to dig out their relatives, who could be heard screaming and crying for help for over 72 hours. Both the Israelis and the Americans said, oh no, we can't get you any excavators, we can't get any bulldozers, we can't get you. The civil defense teams didn't have the equipment to pull these people out from underneath the concrete. And yet it took America less than 8 hours to deliver 30 brand new bulldozers and excavators and heavy machinery, all the stuff that you need to build a port. When the Palestinians were crying to get their relatives out, the Israelis had torched all of the civil defense equipment, so there were no bulldozers. They died crushed to death, slowly and in a lot of pain, screaming and crying for help for over 72 hours. Just think about that. But in 8 hours, the Americans are able to suddenly deliver a whole brand new range of bulldozers and excavators. They can do that to build a port, but they can't do it to save the lives of hundreds of Palestinian people. So that kind of crosses out the word humanitarian. You're talking about, oh, this is a humanitarian port. Well, it wasn't very humanitarian to deny the Palestinians the bulldozers that you've been able to ship from Cyprus within 8 hours. Those people lay there for 72 hours waiting to be rescued under the rubble of their homes, but you couldn't get a bulldozer out for them. Gaza's beach, the place that all Palestinians go in the hot weather, the place they swim, where children have flown kites, where they gallop their horses up the beach. There's wedding venues, there were restaurants and cafes. People flocked to the beach in the summer to cool themselves down and use the beach as a way to get away from the misery and suffering in the colder months. What about the fishing industry? It's gone. The beach is controlled. It's taken over by American troops and mercenaries being paid, private firms being paid to secure the area. So 2,000 troops will suddenly become 20,000 troops. The whole beach is a military zone, a barracks with a controlled entry and exit point where large cargo ships will be able to moor and ship away Palestinians into permanent exile. There are so many reasons why this port is not humanitarian, but this port must go. This port cannot exist, because if it does, then Gaza doesn't exist.